of the baby of the house, Princess Adetoun Adetono, daughter of Olori Adekemi Adetono. The traditional family introduction ceremony of Princess Adetoun Adetono and Olanrewaju Daramola had in attendance the Oba of Lagos, His Royal Majesty Oba Rilwan Akiolu I, supported by his wives, former Governor Olusegun Oshoba of Ogun State and wife, former Governor Benga Daniel of Ogun State, Alhaji Razak Okoya and wife, Chief Mrs. Folashade Okoya, Justice Adeshola Oguntade, the incoming Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of the Council of Lagos State University, and his wife, Chief Mrs. Modupe Ola Oguntade, Sir Kasintin Adebutu and his wife, Chief Mrs. Goforola Adebutu, Dr. Oba Otudeko, CFR, Chief Ayo Adebanjo. Ogun State Government was represented by the Secretary to the State Government, Barrister Taiwo Adeolua, and some commissioners, Olorogun Dr. Sonny Kuku, Chief Chris Okunawa, Chief Mrs. Adebisi Abiola, and others. Also in attendance were a host of other distinguished ladies and gentlemen who adorned proudly Nigerian attires of various designs and styles that further helped to properly project the beauty and elegance of the average Nigerian, who at such occasions does not give anything to chances in the way they look. Ogun State Traditional Institution, led by the Dagbure way of Idowa, stood solidly behind the Awujale and paramount ruler of Ijebuland in this very special occasion. Of course, at occasions like that, every part of the family on both sides are always eager to show love, affection, and support to the core. This was exactly the case at the traditional family introduction ceremony of Princess Adetoun Adetono and Olanrewaju Daramola. The groom, Olanrewaju Daramola's father, the late engineer Daramola, who was a successful businessman, was from Iresi, in the Bolu-Adro local government area of Osun State of Nigeria. His mother, the princess from Ijebu-Shara, in Ogun State of Nigeria. The bride, Princess Adetoun Adetono's mother, Olori Adekemi Adetono, is from the Aleshiloye Williams family from Lagos State. As is customary, the groom's family, led by the elders and other close family members, made the first move to reach out to the bride's family members. The Adetono family was led by Prince Adetono and other family members amidst hearty singing and dancing. The proceedings, which were professionally handled by the mistresses of ceremonies, formally began with the observance of a minute's silence in memory of the late father of the groom, Engineer Daramola. The opening prayer to kick-start the event was rendered by the Ebumawe of Agoiwoy, Oba Abdulrazak Adenuba. The arrival of the groom in company of his friends, who all decked out in white flowing traditional garbs, stepped up the event a notch higher. The obviously delighted groom, who was all smiles throughout, was subjected to a series of hurdles to test his sincerity of purpose, and he came out very clean on all of it. The groom quickly saw the royal blessing from the Awujale, his wife's father, and the mother-in-law, the Olori Kemi Adetono, as well as other elders. Not long after that, the beautiful bride, Princess Adetoun Adetono, supported by her bevy of friends, glided happily to the arena as she also danced to the rich traditional music on offer. She connected quickly with her parents, the Awujale, and her mother, Olori Adekemi Adetono. She danced with her mother before later connecting with her parents-in-law, who also welcomed her very warmly with a lot of love, happiness, and prayers. These all soon fused into prayer session. The program also featured a very long drawn-out session of greetings, acclimatizations, and getting to know one another better by both families. At the end of the day, the Adetono and Daramola family were pronounced as one and the same family, joined together by the strong bond of love between their children, Adetono and Olanrewaju Daramola. The traditional family introduction ceremony between Princess Adetono and Olanrewaju Daramola ended with a reception. This took place in the banquet hall of the Awujale's Palace, Ijebu-Ode, in Ogun State. The main menu at the reception, which had Wasiu Ayinde Marshall's Sound Alike, fast-growing Fuji act, and the Waka Queen herself, a proud daughter of the soil, Salawa Beni, performed at the event. It soon dovetailed into a pure dancing session with the bride and groom, who were later joined by other friends and family members. If the traditional family introduction ceremony between Awujale's daughter, Princess Adetono, and the dashing groom, Olanrewaju Daramola, from Iresi in the Buluwaduru local government of Osun State, attracted this kind of pomp and fanfare and very impressive attendance, the engagements and real wedding still coming ahead are expected to redefine marriages in these parts.
ọmọ lórí ní ọba tẹ̀lé adétòun ọba ẹ̀yọ adétòun ọba ẹ̀yọ adétòun ọba ẹ̀yọ ọmọba méjì náírà adétòun ṣètò mọ̀kí ètò orí o ayélujára iwájú ìròyìn orí ètò. Ọmọba àdìsílá ọgbẹ́rẹ́ méjì yẹ. Ọmọ kábíyèsí àdéhùn.
BOS, the highly respected authority that superintends over entertainment matters among Nigerians, both at home and in the diaspora, will keep you posted so that you can keep appropriate tabs on the exact dates for the concluding part of what has all the potential of becoming one of the most successful love stories in these parts, predicated solely on true love, a scarce commodity today.
Wọ́n lẹ́kọ̀ọ́rin kó ṣe dókítà ṣìṣe bàbájé tó mú ní adúrúkẹ́ adé adúkẹ́ adé mi sì ní pàtó ìyá mi àṣà mi kú ìpàlẹ̀ adé bí sí káṣímádà mi ọmọ tùgà ojú òsè.
Jesus, Ebube, Ebube, Ebube Dike. Hail my Jesus, Ebube, Ebube, Ebube Dike. Hail my Jesus, Ebube, Ebube, Ebube Dike. Hail my Jesus, Ebube, Ebube, Ebube Dike. Been around the world, searching for a miracle, but I found no one, nobody like you, nobody like Jesus. In so many places, searching for.
Please put your hands together for her. Thank you very much. Let me also invite Mrs. Sylvia Dallas Salami, Deputy Director, Public Affairs, Voice of Nigeria, representing the Director General. Please put your hands together for her. I'd like to also invite the Executive Editor, the news magazine, Mr. Kunle Ajibade, who would also be the reviewer of the book. Please put your hands together for him. Last but not the least, I ask Mr. Larry Du, CEO Diamond Publications, to join us on this side of the hall. Mr. Larry Du, please. This beautiful event. My name is Adimola Oyinlola, and I'll be taking you through this program that promises to be a memorable event. Well, a few months ago, actually in the month of May, we gathered at this same premises, Muson Center, at the Shell Hall actually, for an afternoon of tributes in honor of 11 eminent Nigerians who went to be with the Lord in a space of 18 months. We're back today to give personal honor and recognition and admiration for one of them, who would have turned 72, having been born on 13th of July 1949. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Diamond Publications Limited, and the family of late Mr. Ben Ebuna, I welcome you to this event, the presentation of his memoirs, his autobiography entitled A Destiny Fulfilled. Benedict Ndubisi Chidozie Ebuna, known and addressed simply as Ben Ebuna, was, according to Lanredo, CEO of Diamond Publications Limited, who wrote a foreword to the book, said, and I quote, he is many things to many in the broadcast media: reporter, editor, analyst, administrator, colleague and friend and mentor. In a distinguished career characterized by diligence and dedication, he traversed the studios and suites of the Voice of Nigeria and the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, rising to become the first executive director news in the former and director general in the latter, end of quote. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the family of Mr. Ben Ebuna. I'm told that there are three things the British say a man should do. You should marry a wife, you should father a child, and you should write a book. He has written a book. Please put your hands together for him. And so because of that, he lives on in our hearts and in our minds. At this point, I'd like to call on Mr. Lanredo, CEO Diamond Publications, for welcome remarks. Mr. Idowu, please.
Wishers who are here, it is my delight to welcome you on behalf of Diamond Publications to the public presentation of Mr. Ebuna's work. I know that the book meant so much to him, and he looked forward to its formal presentation. But as human ways are not exactly the ways of the Lord, it has pleased the Lord to take him a few months earlier than we had planned that we will present this work. What we are doing today really is just a formal introduction of the book. A book that took him years of mental rigor to write. A lot of research. A book presentation, in a sense, is akin to a child's naming ceremony. An introduction of the child to the company of fellow human beings. In our own traditional settings, whether it is in
inspiring accomplishments, a prince for all seasons, like a great man described him, a publisher's publisher, a thoroughbred Nigerian, a true ambassador of the Obasi family, a caring father, a wonderful family man. We're here to celebrate and say thank you to a respected and revered national icon and treasure, an unapologetic lover of his country, Nigeria, a man of great cordiality who sustained the spirit of rewarding excellence and thank you to nation builders. A great man by excellence, an intellectual giant, friend and mentor to a lot of us. We're here to celebrate the great and audacious Prince Emeka Obasi. Round of applause. We can't go any further without celebrating his jewel of inestimable value, the ever-smiling, ever-supportive Dr. Mrs. Betty Emeka Obasi. When I was preparing for this event, the first thing that struck me is, how do people see Nigeria? How do they see Nigerians? So I did something that I've not done before. I went online and Googled the great things about Nigeria. And I saw culture. Nigeria is a multi-ethnic country with over 250 ethnic groups, more than 500 indigenous languages. Nigerians are proud of their cultural diversity and heritage. People. Nigerians are known for being hardworking, resilient, problem solvers. They value hard work and perseverance as well as overcome challenges and achieve success. Economy. Nigeria has the fastest growing economy in Africa, the highest GNP on the continent, and the largest agricultural output. It's also Africa's largest producer of oil and gas. Weather. For someone who just came back from the very cold, unpredictable weather of the UK, I read that Nigeria has good weather, with the exceptional and occasional man-made flooding. And that got me thinking, man-made. Landscape. Nigeria has beautiful landscapes, including the Jos Plateau rolling hills and the Lagos rugged coastline. Visitors can explore natural wonders like Yankari National Reserve and the Obudu Mountain Resort. Your Excellency, we'll come back to that. Arts and culture. Nigeria is rich in arts and culture and has produced many famous painters and sculptures. The Nigerian music movement seem to have taken over the world, where international superstars want to sample Nigerian brand of music. So my question is this: why is the giant crawling? Why are we where we are of occasional man-made flooding? The phrase that I want to pick from that is man-made. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to ask you to think about that and welcome you to this inaugural memorial lecture that we tag Prince Emeka Obasi. Inaugural memorial lecture, If This Giant Must Walk, Manifesto for a New Nigeria. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please let's rise for the national anthem of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Great lofty to build. Amen. Thank you for coming. You may be seated. God bless you.
This is right. So I see a lot of people here who have been in power. I want to know, we want to know how these giants can walk. And I don't want to see the giants walk in my lifetime. I want to see the giant run. For all those who think it's possible, can I see your hand? You see, we're hopeful people, and may it come to pass. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you. I thank you for coming. And I'm told we have a very short documentary. If the engineer is ready, please let's sit back, relax, and watch. But don't forget, these giants must walk.
It is often said that stars never die. Though they may grow farther and dimmer with time, we always remember their brightness and warmth. And today, as we remember our brother, father, leader, mentor, publisher, business associate, husband and friend, Prince Emeka Obasi, we cannot help but echo his sentiment. Although he is not here with us, the memory of his light burns brightly in our hearts forever. In true fashion, his voice echoes far beyond his time, and his passion for nation building and public policy will continue to inspire us even in the coming years. A whiz in the world of pen and paper, Prince Emeka wrote hundreds of articles in his editorial on the business. It is safe to say Prince Emeka Obasi was a veritable prophet, as most of the insights, predictions, and foresight shared in his articles are Nigeria's reality today. His ultimate yet unpublished work, titled "If This Giant Must Work, Manifesto for a New Nigeria," further portrays his thoughts on the state of the nation while showing us the depth of his passion and vision for his beloved country, Nigeria. A mediapreneur par excellence, Prince Emeka Obasi constantly showed us the importance of diligence and dedication to our visions. He not only led us to be better people in our lives and careers, he also pointed us back to God through his dedication and service in his relationship with God. Today, as we recall his strength and brilliance, we also call to the fore his deep love and respect for his
organizers of the Zik Prize for Leadership and member of the advisory board of the Obafemi Awolowo Leadership Award. Please let's welcome the good professor, Iron Iron. So please welcome us. A round of applause for you both.
Today, I had been given the license not to talk. This is why I'm not on the podium. However, at this particular point in time, I'm supposed to be giving a lecture at the Lagos of the Night Summit Group. But because I think that the people there, I will always be able to see them. The ones here, from what you said, it's interesting to know who, after Emeka has left us, still relevant. As I see the crowd, I know true that a good man never dies. Let me thank you, because it was looking at the madman, because nobody seemed to have confidence that Nigeria was redeemable. The lecture I'm giving today there is in the national economic growth, values, every other thing we can do and have done, but leadership we've not gotten right. Let me not go ahead of you. So gentlemen, ladies, welcome to the new Nigeria.
Promoter, Mr. Clean and Green. I remember visiting his state then, and I asked myself, is this Nigeria? He was governor of Cross River State from May 29, 1999 to 29 May 2007. And in the 2019 election, he was the presidential candidate for the SDP. He always insists when we meet him to call him Mr. Donald Duke. A round of applause for our chairman. Please come up, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. With him when he was governor, and over there, sir. And the guy that went with me said, we don't have much today. Governor will give us money. I looked at my guy and laughed. We had lunch. And hard work, an exceptional NAE. He's a builder, thinker, and an indefatigable leader of his generation. He's visionary, is a best-selling author and public speaker, a man that Ekiti owes loads of gratitude. Former governor of Ekiti State, former chairman of the Nigeria's Governors Forum, former minister of Mines and Steel Development of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The one I love to call our own JKF, Dr. John Kayode, Commander of the Order of the Nigeria. Round of applause. And last but definitely not the least, to occupy this side, I know Betty Emeka Obasi, as she takes our position. Not live here, and I'll be doing a great disservice to everybody, but another ace broadcaster just walked in. Can I have a round of applause?
His shrill voice in my ears, was quite a character, one that we will not forget in a while. He was boisterous, he was energetic. He didn't see any walls or partitions. He walked through it, he befriended if he felt that he needed to befriend you. And he would tell you as it is. But above all, he was an incredible pan-Nigerian. He loved this country to the depth of his heart, and was quite disappointed about the country. And so we all are disappointed. We could do better. We know we have the capacity. We're disappointed not just ourselves, but disappointed the whole world. Because the whole world was rooting for us. It's the real context of where we are as a people. So it's not for the giant to walk, it's how you're walking. Are you walking, or are you walking forward? If you're walking, which is what we've been doing for the last 40 years, you're moving backwards. So you can now put into context the pressure. If the annual budget of our nation is $19 billion, 40 years after when it was 25 and the population was more than doubled, then you can understand all the challenges we're facing, whether it's banditry or farmers' clash or whatever clash we have. Everything comes alive. That there are more people sharing a smaller pot, right? We have not grown, we have shrunk tremendously. We can put all the zeros we like behind the currency, trillion. At that time, trillion, we only used the word trillion when it came to sand and things like that. Now, every state, even my state at one time said they had trillion. So, recently, we issued or invited treasury bills were being sold at about 22% or something like that. The dollars. Where in the world would you get 22% on a dollar? So they now would generate 22% to enable you to pay back in 12 months. Now, so you can see a nation that is walking itself with its eyes wide open. There's something I don't understand. This Yahoo business is not just among the boys, it's also in government. So, who are we deceiving? What are the policies that will generate growth? You're fighting inflation. It's good to fight inflation. But which is more important? And you can't decide this. Is it inflation or growth? Or would growth cater for inflation? You now have you can't get more than, you can't get a loan from a bank less than 35%. So that is inimical to growth to start with. Then you are micromanaging exchange rate, yet you're not producing. If you're going to import everything, as we do, and as those very sexy economists and say, look, let's have market forces. Look, for you to have market forces and there must be some equality. You can't have an open competitive system with countries that have economies much stronger than yours. You can't have a free market between you and Germany and you and China. It doesn't work that way. In life, what you find is level. You can have a free market amongst West Africa, but you can't. You don't have the capacity. So you come today. Oh, come. I mean, we were later when our own guy in Toulouse was planning to do nails and things like that. Today we're importing to abroad at 8. Will never be a foreigner, will never be a Nigerian. Then you go for a medical check. Maybe you have your eyes hurt you a bit, you want to go to London, you want to do this and do that. It is a tough one. It's really a tough one. Let me turn around and say we're the largest economy in Africa. Excuse my language, that's bullshit, that's a lie. We're not. If you're 200 million people producing this twin state, you have a large number, but it doesn't make it the largest economy. If you take it per capita, you're one of the least economies in Africa. That's the truth. So we need to get off this lie that we've been telling ourselves and be real. We have the potential to be one of the greatest nations on earth, but it remains potential if you don't take it to actuality. I don't want to steal your thunder, so I won't say more than this, but I want us really to recalibrate our thinking. If we're going to leave this country for the next generation, we've got to prepare them, we've got to prepare the foundation for it. And that's why I particularly recognize Professor Aina. He's been on the vanguard of this clarion call for a new Nigeria recent. And I can imagine how frustrated he may be, but he has his shoulders are broad, he'll take it. But let's not, we can't go on this way. It's not possible. We are a failed state, that's true. A failed state doesn't mean that you don't exist any longer. Somalia still exists, but when you fail to provide for your people, when you fail to provide the basic expectations of your people, you are technically a failed state. So we're failed. Which sector can we say we have not failed? Is it education? Is it healthcare? Is it infrastructure? I don't want to go into this new infrastructure. I think kind of we can talk about that. The one which really was out of Calabar. It's a new area. Well, it's an APC project, so we'll leave it for you guys. Okay? But we're probably running a criminal enterprise. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Thank you for stopping our friend and brother, and let me welcome another friend and brother to come speak to us, Kade. Thank you.
His Excellency, the Deputy Governor of Abia State, when I spoke to my brother last night, anticipating that he would be here, he said, no, that you were already in Lagos, because he had to attend to labor matters. And of course, as the only labor governor we have in Nigeria, that's clearly understandable. But the elders are here, of course, led by our mentor and principal, Professor Anya. And let me just add to what Donald has said. If Prof has not given up at 85, none of us here have the merit to give up. And I'll just give you the summary of my presentation, but I'll talk about it. Let me also thank our sister for this. Of course, I'm biased, and I was the award a few years back. Emeka taught us many life lessons, whose full import finds resonance as we continue to navigate this prolonged period of uncertainty in national and global affairs. It was out of such a season of uncertainty that Emeka himself burst onto the national scene, carving a niche as a builder of bridges across divides and as a creator of value out of our adversity. Emeka extended love to all and malice towards none, and it was truly a prince for all seasons, to recall my brother Femi Awayemi's apt description. His untimely passing robbed us of his courage and audacity, by which he spoke truth to power at all times, whilst upholding the ideals of integrity, compassion, character, competence, and commitment to national unity and progress in a framework of democratic governance and cultural diversity. Not one to be easily dismissed as an armchair critic, our late brother established himself as a credible business leader and a successful newspaper proprietor, a public intellectual par excellence, and public policy promoter extraordinaire. There is much in his life to celebrate, and it is fitting that the Public Policy Forum has inaugurated this memorial lecture in his honor. And I thank the board and the management and his darling wife, Dr. Mrs. Betsy Emeka Obasi, for doing their utmost to keep Emeka's touch of excellence burning ever so brightly. May his legacy endure far into the future, even as his soul continues to enjoy eternal rest. The theme of this inaugural memorial lecture is certainly most appropriate for the times. Only those with delusions of grandeur will not agree that this giant is crawling and not walking yet. Although the challenges of nation building have been manifest for several years, it is now clear that they are actually deteriorating, as evidenced by the many cases of violent conflicts that are playing out with regard to the governance of the nation state and discontent with the nation-building experience. Indeed, the recurrent predictions about the imminent collapse or failure, we just had the chair refer to that word again, failure of the Nigerian state, are beginning to look more credible by various developments in the polity. The violent activities of separatist agitators, vociferous revisionist contestations of the Amalgamation Act of 1914, generalized discontent with the prolonged underperformance of the Nigerian economy, heightened recrimination, insecurity and violence, feelings of marginalization, exclusion and injustice, and concerns about various dysfunctions in the federal system are some of the sources of concern about the future prospects of the country. I sometimes ask the question, as I'm sure many in this audience also do from time to time, how best should we approach the challenge of nation building that ails us? Many thought leaders have diagnosed the problem and profiled a myriad of solutions. There are those who think the problem with Nigeria is our size. Some others think it is the many ethnic interests competing with one another for domination. Others think it is simply about bad leadership and failure of governance, while some others believe it's the constitution's stupid. There are still some Pan-Africanists who believe colonialism, foreign religion, and intellectual imperialism are the reasons we're lagging behind. The thirst for excuses and culprits to blame for our obvious challenges is an insatiable one, and so the blame game continues. While it's really not the primary task of this lecture to dwell on this blame game, since the task I've been assigned is to propose a new manifesto for the giant to work. I believe it would be remiss of me and far historical in large measure to completely ignore the nature of the problem, its provenance and consequences before arriving at a proposed manifesto. Consequently, in thinking through how to ensure this giant works and developing a manifesto for a new Nigeria, an important question to ask, and many have also asked this question, is whether what we need to do is unmake Nigeria or remake Nigeria. Recent scholarly writings, most notable among them, Why Nations Fail, The Origins of Power, Prosperity and Poverty by Darren Acemoglu and James Robinson, focused on what makes for successful nation building and what drives nations to failure. The drivers of the contemporary difficulties that confront Nigeria are varied, though also interconnected, insofar as they all point in different ways to a crisis of governance that has been allowed by acts of commission or omission to build up, become more complicated, and worsen over time. As captured in popular everyday discourses, the various dimensions of the crisis of governance include, among others, a decline in the moral fiber of society and the collapse of ethics in public and private life, the spread of the cankerworm of corruption in state and society, the collapse of patriotism among leaders and followers alike, an alleged incompatibility among the various ethnic groups that were forced without their consent into an amalgamation in 1914, the decline in our citizens' welfare, and the perceived feelings of marginalizations of sections of the populace. These popular perspectives on the nation-building challenges facing the country mostly speak to the symptoms of a much deeper malaise in statecraft that deserves much greater attention, especially from those who are desirous of seeing these giants work. The roots of the malaise can be summarized as comprising the failure to build, consolidate, and popularize a broad national leadership consensus on the basis of which actions and performance can be assessed. The degradation of the basic state society social bargain on the basis of which citizenship and leadership can be nurtured and advanced. A paucity of leadership vision that is a nation-building process. A crisis of population mobility within the country that has fed a dynamic of distrust, and the twin problems of poverty and inequality that serve as fodder for the alienation of a significant swath of the populace. To the above-mentioned factors that underpin the governance malaise facing the country must be added the unfortunate trend in extreme parochialism in the administration of public affairs that has undermined the effective and conscious management of national diversity. This in turn has eroded the sense of belonging to the polity and fed into open and silent forms of dissent and disloyalty among sections of the populace. In the absence of a consistent and an expansive economic growth record and the Chairman Johnson period, dissent and disloyalty have worsened and are ossifying into a culture of mutual recrimination and distrust that are detrimental to the nation-building agenda. The zero-sum nature of elite competition for power has also compounded the problems of nation-building, producing, as it does, a negative incentive system whereby personality prevails over ideas, institutions are hijacked, privatized, and undermined, informal networks of power and privilege trump inclusive institutions and merit. The task of nation building is not a one-off or a static exercise, but rather a dynamic and permanent work in progress. There is no experience of nation building anywhere in the world that is perfect from the outset. and remains so despite changing times and circumstances. However, the many proposals that have been making the rounds in Nigerian circles about how to overcome the contemporary threats to unity and stability have hardly been helpful in restoring the ideals of nation building. In fact, if anything, there have been some instances in their rigidity and dogmatism been reduced to counterproductive sloganeering and cliches, such as we have witnessed in the outburst of secessionist agitators of the IPOB, Niger Delta militants, or Yoruba Nation stripes. Inevitably, if we understand nation building as work in progress and an endless endeavor, and also concur that no generation ever completes the nation building project, then you would also agree with me that the idea of remaking the nation state should not suggest the wholesale unmaking of the nation state. Renowned Nigerian writer Ben Okri, in his Booker Prize-winning book, The Famished Road, tells of a people who for several generations have been trying to build a road. But no matter how hard they work, they never go far in their endeavor. Even then, whatever little progress they make is always destroyed by disasters beyond their comprehension. And they will have to start all over, much like the course of Sisyphus. Yet, every generation understands that it is their destiny to try and complete this road. History has taught them that the road will never be completed, but they never give up, because each generation hopes that it will be the generation that gets the job done. Several commentators have noted that Okri's unfinishable road is in fact a grand metaphor for nation building. However, in releasing this story to our country, Nigeria, and our own efforts at nation building, rather than the collapsing road, I would like us to think in terms of an infinite wall of greatness with the natural potential to reach far beyond the skies. It is the destiny of every generation to build on this wall and take it to a higher level, even though we know that the job will never be done, because there's no limit to how high we can build. In the light of our recent history, it is easy to point at our many false starts, or even several instances when we have outrightly betrayed our generational mission. We may indeed wonder that despite the great efforts of more than 60 years, how come this great war has barely left the foundation stage? Even with our enormous wealth of bricks and mortars and our expert architects and builders. 64 years may be a long time in the life of an individual, but a 64-year-old nation is really, truly a nation yet in its infancy. Therefore, rather than despair over the failures of the past, I think it will be more productive that we look ahead with great hopes at the infinite future that lies ahead of us, and with that immortal admonition from the French West Indian psychiatrist and political philosopher Frantz Fanon, that every generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, betray it, or fulfill it. Over the years, many Nigerians have agonized, understandably, over the lamentably slow pace of our development. Successive governments and policymakers have responded with various approaches and strategies for achieving the much desired national development. Yet, even the most charitable analysts of our political economy would agree that we have not performed to our optimal capabilities. So many experts have made great efforts to explain our underdevelopment, with some, like the late Professor Claudake, even arguing that development was never part of the post-colonial African political agenda. And if you agree with Claudake, it appears to me obvious that the fundamental challenge is that all along we have been placing the cart before the proverbial horse. Before we can think of development, we must first solve the problems of nation building, because you cannot develop what you do not have. When the Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka asked, "When is a nation?" he was attempting to draw attention to those urgent questions of nation building that have remained largely unanswered till this day. The development of every nation necessarily derives from a national consensus. However, this consensus can only be forged after some fundamental questions, what we call the national questions, have been settled. Questions that settle the difference between a country, the geographic area, a state, the political territory, and a nation, a people united by common descent, history, culture, and values, where the very existence of the country, the state, or nation itself is easily brought to question. At the slightest provocation, it should be clear that we have to ask and settle certain questions first. And it is the settlement that will then provide the foundation for our vision of society and the structure and direction of our national development. In short, the very notion of national integration is directly consequential to our understanding of nation building as work in progress. Over the years, I have had many, even presumably informed analysts, refer to our country as the mistake of 1914. But was the amalgamation really a mistake? To describe the amalgamation as a mistake would be wrong, both historically and conceptually. The hands that drew the map may not have been indigenous, we all agree to that. But the map was possible only because we were here in the first place. Every student of history will agree that as a people, if not as a country, Lord Lugard did not introduce us to ourselves. Long before the white man set foot on our land, our people have developed an intricate network of relationships. Even though they lived in their various enclaves as independent peoples, they traded together, they married one another, they fought together as allies in battle and against one another as adversaries. Our cultures intermingled freely and produced rich syntheses of cultures in such a way that no single culture was left pure and unaffected from this intercourse, as evidenced in new vocabularies, diets, and even dress. It is also important to note that many of our empires and kingdoms were territorial rather than tribal. They luxuriated and thrived on their diversity and formed unions and alliances based on shared understanding and mutual interest. A cursory analysis of our languages and belief systems will reveal that we actually have more in common than some of our differences would suggest. Therefore, while the colonialists may have been culpable for creating the country, and I'm responding to the Pan-Africanist thing, that we call Nigeria without consulting us, the task of forging a nation out of this colonial invention rests squarely in our hands. And this task must progress from a deliberate effort to remobilize and reinterpret our history, especially our pre-colonial history. If we take a sociological look, we will see clearly that we did not arrive there by chance or as products of colonial misadventure. In his book titled "Can Anything Good Come Out of History?", famous historian, former vice chancellor of our premier university of Barrow Ekime, observed that it is not colonialism that introduced the Igbos to the Igalas, the Kanuris to its neighboring states, the Efik to the Ibibios, and the Igbos, the Shekiris to the Yorubos, or the Yorubas to the Nupes. He noted, brought together, sometimes as prisoners of geography and history, all these people knew about themselves and respected their varying cultures and susceptibilities. He went further to underline the important roles that historians and teachers of history must play as we strive to build a nation out of this colonial legacy called Nigeria. He argued, and I quote him, that there is a need to provide a general framework of our nation's history, a need to indicate broad influences and operative factors in our history, a need to identify the nature and impact of contact between our peoples, a need to identify factors that make for the differences discernible among our peoples. One of the most popular anecdotes that survived from our early efforts at nation building was the one credited to the late Sardauna of Sokoto, Sir Ahmadu Bello. He was said to have retorted in a conversation with the great Zik of Africa that in coming together as a country, we do not need to forget our differences. Rather, we only need to recognize and respect them. It is not clear to what extent this wise admonition was taken on board by our founding fathers as they tried to grapple with the challenges of nation building in post-colonial Nigeria. However, embedded in the notion of unity in diversity is a distinct awareness that sameness is not necessarily a precondition for oneness. Perhaps one major area that the successive generations have failed is in the tendency to stigmatize difference and weaponize diversity. We are Muslims, we are Christians, we are animists, we are Idomas, Tiv, Angas, Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, Kanuri, Fulani, and so on. We don't need to apologize for these differences or attempt to hide them because there is nothing wrong in being different. I think the problem starts only when these social categorizations become the boundaries for inclusion or exclusion. Development anthropologists have long concluded that culture plays a crucial role in development. In other words, every culture essentially contains the facilities for progress and advancement, the language in which we articulate our ideas, our diet, consumption patterns, our architectures, and the way we live, our religion and how we understand our relationship with God and to the universe, our notion of ethics, morality, and justice, all of this in different forms and at different levels provide the essential driving force for development. What this means, therefore, is that the more diverse the cultures within a nation, the more resources they have for development and for progress. In essence, homogeneity is not necessarily a blessing, and diversity need not be a curse. This is why it is important to always make the distinction between our differences, which is essentially benign, and the politicization of those differences, which constitute the malignant cancer in the body of our nation state. One thing we do not seem to celebrate enough in our ability to live together as a diverse but unified country, despite the centrifugal forces of our politics. It is in fact what makes us better than even Europeans, who have found diversity management a lot more challenging. Countries in the Balkan Peninsula have collapsed from Yugoslavia into Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia, and Herzegovina, and gave us the word balkanized. Czechoslovakia became Czech and Slovak nations. The Soviet Union couldn't hold together, and Britain still has not found a definitive answer to the Irish, the Welsh, and the Scottish question. But imagine Nigeria, with over 250 ethnic nationalities, where only one or two states, my own state Ekiti and probably Bayelsa, and indeed very few communities can claim to be homogeneous. Yet we have managed our diversity relatively well until we lost the values of tolerance, equity, fairness, and justice, which we inherited from our founding fathers. despite the challenges that we have faced as a nation, it is important, and this is the point I really want to understand, for us to constantly bear in mind that nation building is really a slow process. The awareness that nothing in nation building is finalized should give us hope and challenge us to do better and constantly look for ways and means to build a better country by experimentation and learning, trial and error, setting and resetting. That said, and in full acknowledgement of the existence of many underlying integrative and embedded factors, such as the ones referred to by Professor Obarekimi, that serve as the enduring pillars for the continued survival of Nigeria as a united country, the point cannot be denied that the nation-building project has been under a severe strain in our country. We therefore cannot afford to be complacent or indifferent to the demands that have been accumulating for some time for a refounding of the basis for the unity and progress of the country. For in the end, as much as no Nigerian government will ever accept to preside over the dissolution of the country, the idea that the unity of the country is not negotiable or its inherited frame of governance is not open to questioning will need to be completely jettisoned.
True.
For as history teaches us, empires, kingdoms, and republics come and go. Those political systems that endure and pass the test of time are only those that are adept at recalibrating their governance arrangements to respond in a timely and comprehensive manner to changing times and needs. And this is why the operative framework of any nation is never intended as a divinely inspired scripture. So we must see our challenges as opportunities to test our governance system and its responsive capacity to issues of national coexistence. The integrity of our governance and administrative system must be continually measured in terms of its ability to deliver the greater good to the greatest number of our people. If we're not able to do this, we must be willing to press the reset button and ask ourselves, why is the system that we all must submit to not work for us all? However, for us to constructively confront these issues, we must start by first conquering the demon of mutual suspicion and distrust that has poisoned our politics and subverted our will to achieve the necessary consensus that is so crucial to marching confidently towards our destiny as a walking giant. If we do this, we would have scaled the major obstacle to forging a great nation out of this colonial creation and show the world that we are finally ready to embrace our true destiny as the hope of all black people everywhere. To therefore move towards a manifesto for a new Nigeria. The second stanza, and I'm glad that the moderator asked us to recite that in a prayer, the second stanza of our national anthem ends with an infinity that underlines that nation building as an unending search for perfection. It says, and I quote, "To build a nation where peace and justice shall reign." For the next 1,000 years, no matter the progress we would have made, as long as this country continues to exist, even for Americans, means with nothing and with everything, all the earlier mistakes. They may not know that they know, but they do. They know the early plans, the original intentions, the earliest dreams. Each generation has to reconnect the dreams for themselves. They tend to become a little wiser, but don't go very far. It is possible that they now travel slower. Big periods of our history, national experience, were distrustful of change, even if change is what our situation recommends. We must, however, take note that the generation that wants to take over from us are products of a different historical experience to facilitate their dreams. nurtured in the course of some of the most rapid transformation in human history, they are less fearful of change and experimentation. If it is not working, they want it fixed. That is why anyone who holds a semblance of power or authority in this country today should be deeply worried about the depth of despair, particularly among our youthful population. What started, for example, as an innocuous online protest over police brutality snowballed before our very eyes into a mass movement that assumed more frightening dimensions. From the demand to end SARS, we have seen more vigorous demand for greater transparency and accountability and greater efficiency in government by the obedient generation. What I understand the youth to be saying What I understand our youth to be saying is that we, the older generation, have failed them. By our inability to create a system that supports their dreams and accommodates their aspirations. From the language of their protest, we can see clearly that our youth feel pushed to the margin of our nation's socio-political and economic structures. It is incumbent on us to listen to what they are saying, and a lot more that they are probably not saying yet. For over a decade, several analysts have noted that our massive youth population could be a major demographic advantage to our country if it is properly harnessed. Years of neglect and failure to make the right investment to support this population is now quite predictably turning into a major disruptive force and a time bomb. I'm afraid that the bomb has started to tick loudly. We must therefore act fast and start now to create systems that provide opportunities for our young people and make it possible for them to attain their God-given potentials. And in responding to the challenges that this moment imposes on us, we must recognize that a business as usual approach will no longer be sufficient. What we need is a fundamental re-engineering of our governance system in a way that will make our country work better for everyone. Whether it is NSAS, obedient movement, or Japa syndrome, I understand the tone and tenor of agitation amongst our youth as a discursive signal that encapsulates the frustration of young people at multiple levels. We must therefore engage it as such and try to focus on the opportunities that this situation presents. In our quest towards ensuring that this giant works, the main challenge, as I see it, is one of recreating the union and the basis of its fundamental national association. Unfortunately, this is one issue that we have allowed to be implicated in our instinctive mutual suspicion and unnecessary brickbats, caught in our politics of difference and otherness, devolution, decentralization. Scholar and former chairman of INEC, Professor Tairi Jega, when he said that sooner than later, these matters have to be addressed squarely but dispassionately. The challenge is how to address the issue of restructuring the Nigerian federal system without upsetting the apple cart. That is, how to add value to the structure and systemic efficacy of the federal arrangement without unleashing instability occasioned by the mobilization of ethnic, regional, and religious sentiments and identities. I will argue, therefore, that our idea of restructuring must be motivated only by our generational responsibility to make the giant walk tall and to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign, based on the operative principle that true greatness lies in building a country that works for everyone, regardless of the language they speak or how they understand and worship their God. The evolution of Nigeria's federalism has not served our best interest, and it is not surprising that we have witnessed protests at every attempt towards a constitutional re-engineering. And we have two prominent examples in this report.